Miss PD World, I am SYED SHABAHAT and you're watching Fault Lines. The first and foremost story of today's program is a devastating flood in Libya that has washed away more than 11,000 lives. Also, more than 38,000 people have been displaced. An entire city has been eaten up by the great wall of water that was created essentially by the breakage of two different dams. All of that could have ideally been avoided. Libya, a country of African continent, has not seen anything like that in last decades. Team Fault Lines have prepared a package. Watch the package before I bring my first guest to the program.
Divided and embroiled in a civil war, Libya is hit by devastating floods. Thousands are dead and thousands more missing. The country is reeling from the devastating flooding, which is, in part, caused by strong storms itself, but Libya's catastrophe was greatly exacerbated by a lethal confluence of factors, including aging, crumbling infrastructure, inadequate warnings, and the impacts of the accelerating climate crisis. The extreme rainfall that hit Libya was brought on by a system called Storm Daniel. Storm Daniel was formed over Greece on the 4th of September. It caused strong winds, heavy rains, flooding, and deaths there, and in Turkey and Bulgaria before crossing the Mediterranean. The storm made landfall in Libya a few days later, causing flooding in cities along its eastern coast, including Benghazi, Beida, and Derna. Derna was the hardest hit after two dams burst upstream from the city, releasing an estimated 30 million cubic meters of water that tore through the city of about 100,000 inhabitants. The dams had not been maintained for more than 2 decades, and the infrastructure was not built to withstand the effects of this week's floods. The risk climate-fueled extreme weather poses to infrastructure, not just dams, but everything from buildings to water supplies, is a global one, and international community must step up efforts to help build the developing world climate-resilient infrastructure.
To talk about this very pertinent issue, I am joined by Nazir Mueed, who is an expert of Middle Eastern affairs and talks about subjects pertaining to Arabian Peninsula. Nazir, I welcome you to the show.
Welcome, Brother Shabbat.
We are talking about this very catastrophic flood that has swept an entire city. It has affected many other areas. 38,640 people have been affected, and this number count is increasing. On the first day it was 5,000, then 11,000. Recent count was probably 20,000. What exactly has happened there?
Well, the windstorm Daniel, which hit the northern parts of Libya on the Mediterranean Sea, it was very strong and full of floods and rains. The torrents hit the cities, especially the city of Derna. And it was not prepared for any type of catastrophe, and the dams collapsed. So it was not prepared to for this type of heavy rains. And the floods hit that the whole Derna and the surrounding villages of hundreds of kilometers. Thousands of people were killed, and tens of thousands actually are still missing. Nobody knows if they are still alive, but mostly the lot of lives are lost. The people lost their properties, their cattle, and there is so much lost in this area. And actually, the whole country is under a lot of humanitarian crisis due to the political instability since many years, and that was actually the result of all the political instability and economic crisis in this country.
And many people say this all could have been avoided with better forecast of this storm coming, and particularly with the right management of the dams that have actually broken one after another, creating such a huge wall of water. Is that right?
Definitely, because all the dams in that area didn't get any type of maintenance since 2011. And even the experts say that budgets were passed to these dams, to the maintenance of these dams, even in the times of Gaddafi in 2007, but it didn't get any maintenance since that time. And since 2011, not a single penny was spent on the maintenance of these dams. And of course, due to the clashes, due to the wars in this country, nobody took care of such issues, which create big disasters and huge loss in lives of people and casualties, and also in the economic situation of the country.
Political instability is one of the major problems that the Libyans are facing at the moment. It has been almost 10 years since we have lost Gaddafi, and the country has not seen any sign of political stability. What do you believe can be the primarily reasons behind it? Doesn't the country have any indigenous leadership to take over? Doesn't its democratic process has the capacity to represent the will of the people?
Well, usually in countries like Libya, where conflict starts, then international players take their parts. And the international community have played its part in destabilizing the country, in creating different groups. Libya is now governed by two separate governments, one in the east, one in the west, one in Trablus, and the other is supported by General Khalifa Haftar, who is ex-man of Gaddafi in the early 90s, 80s and 90s.
A colonel of his army.
Yeah. So, this destabilizing the country and the political situation in the country made it unstable, made the people, a normal man in the road is very neglected by his government, by the systems ruling in his area, and the daily life issues of the people are not the priorities of all the authorities, whether in the east or in the west.
There is further deep division in the society as well. We have pointed out already the political division between the political leaders who are not agreed to come forward for something that can become a holistic solution of it. But aren't these ethnic issues also playing a very pertinent role in further dividing Libya and parting it away from each other?
In Libya, it's not only the ethnic issues, but it's the ideological separation and disagreements between different parties, different political leaders, and also the militias who are on grounds, the forces who have the powers on the ground. So in Libya, after the Gaddafi regime, a lot of weapons, a lot of forces were on the ground, and till today they are the people who are controlling the political situation in Libya. The political government in Libya have not big value till today. Even it is supported, especially the Western government in Trablus. It is recognized and supported by the international community, by the UN, but on ground, the militias and the forces on ground, they are still controlling it, and sometimes even the different parts of these forces from who are loyal to the same government, they fight against each other, and this is very disappointing.
This is a very unique part of Libyan crisis, where these militias, despite the fact that they are under the flagship of various leaders, still there are problems brewing between these groups, and they're fighting against each other. In times we feel as if there is no centrality of command even within the ranks and files of these groups. So tell us about these militias fighting against each other in a bit more detail.
Well, after the revolutionists took over Tarablos, and then after that they captured Gaddafi, Muammar al-Gaddafi. Then they started the political journey. They established a government in Tarablos, and then they started fighting for their parts in the cake. Some were supported by different international players. Some other were serving the country and the revolution. Some are supported from neighboring countries. So then they were distributed into many parts, but the major players were the forces of Libya, Dawn, Fajr Libya, and then the General Khalifa Haftar was supported by some countries like UAE, like Egypt, like other countries to start, and then he started the government in the east. And he was supported also by the council, the political council established after the revolution took over the Gaddafi regime. But the parliament supported the government in Tarablos, and they didn't accept the General Khalifa Haftar. And also the Fajr Libya forces, they also supported the parliament, and they created a new government in Tarablos, which is separated from the government in the east. And they started fighting against each other, and everyone have their supporters from the international community. And they get budgets, they get weapons from different countries, they get tanks, and so that created a big
and also there is a strong foothold of many terrorist organizations, like we have heard about IS enjoying a strong foothold in some parts of the country. So tell us more about organizations like IS taking controls.
Yeah, of course, in such political environment where there is no authority, there is no control of law, then a lot of groups will enter, especially the extremist groups like ISIS. They have conducted a lot of their activities in different parts of Libya's. And also they were running or managing their operations outside of Libya from their bases in Libya. So they created a headache for the neighboring countries as well. And this also was an input for the destabilization of the political system in Libya.
And going forward, how do you see politics unfolding in Libya? Do you think this country will remain to be in shambles, or to be in control of these opposite groups that are fighting, that are trying to resolve all these disputes? The Battle of the Guns as it has already been 10 years. Do you see any hope for the democratic process to come forward, as the country's badly facing all these challenges ever since Muammar Gaddafi has left?
The government, which is recognized by the international community, is getting stronger somehow. They are trying to make positive negotiations with the government supported by Khalifa Haftar in the east part of Libya. The current situation and the current disaster which hit Derna and other cities of Libya, this is a sign that they should sit and negotiate. the international community and especially the United States, they believe that this disaster might be a positive opportunity for the international community to enhance the political situations in Libya, and to have better communication with the normal people in the country. Even though in the current history of different areas in the world, the supporting the humanitarian sector by the West was not so much positive in different countries, that didn't support stabilizing the central government, but it was actually making pressure groups and pressure blocks inside these countries.
Thank you very much, Nazir, for being guest in our show. Ladies and gentlemen, as Nazir has pointed out, that in the process of coming together politically, both the sides are making their efforts to improve the situation in Libya. We'll take a break and we'll join you back for the second part of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back. Kim Jong-un, the absolute monarch and leader of North Korea, is on a visit of Russia these days. There is a high-powered delegation that is with him, and Russians are making sure they get maximum out of it. What can be the reasons behind? Apparently, there are two things. First is that Russia is now trying to look into making up new alliances, because all their old partners are not available to support them any further because of diplomatic accomplishments made by NATO and non-NATO allies. On the other hand, North Korea is a country that is so much isolated. They are isolated from the rest of the world for such a long time that they see them for themselves a win-win situation, particularly a country that is coming out of famines and food shortages, see a lot to gain from what can be a revised or revisited relationship between the two sides. To talk about this very pertinent issue, I am joined by Mohammad Taimur, who is an expert on Russian affairs and has frequently been appearing on Fault Lines. Taimur, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, first things first, don't you believe the diplomatic relationship between the two sides is emerging out of an ice age and has a lot to offer? Both the countries have not been diplomatically very close for quite long.
Well, I won't call it coming out of an ice age, but I'll definitely say that it is coming out of a considerable amount of time in the freezer. Ever since the North Korea initiated its nuclear program and tested its first nuclear weapon back in 2003, Russia and North Korea Russia basically distanced itself from North Korea because of the international UN sanctions that were imposed against it by the United States as well as the rest of the international community for carrying out different ballistic missile tests and enriching uranium. So yes, Russia being a part of you can say UNSC, permanent 5 members, had to support the international sanctions against North Korea, and its policy of distancing itself slowly away from North Korea started to take place. But their relations go back to the early 1940s and 1950s. It was even evident from the statements or the exchange of views between Kim Jong-un and President Putin, when Kim Jong-un clearly mentioned that North Korea thanks USSR, now Russia, for its independence and all the help that the USSR provided to the North Korean early leadership when it first became independent after 1953. Russia also fully supported North Korea during the Korean War in the Korean Peninsula, and it kept on helping successive governments within North Korea as well. So the North Korea and Russia relationship is a very old relationship spanning over multiple decades. It has remained always strong, but I'd like to add here that it has been a marriage of convenience. Whenever their strategic goals or priorities started to align, their relationship always came to the forefront, like we are seeing in the contemporary times.
But Taimur, as you have said, you won't call it coming out of ice age. Still, you see some ice breaking happening.
Of course.
And don't you believe the primary trigger for this ice breaking is the increasing diplomatic isolation that Russia has started witnessing? And I'm saying this because of Turkey's support for the issue of Sweden and Finland's inclusion to NATO.
Well, I won't add Turkey's element that much into North Korea and Russia relationship, but I think it is just like the enemy of my enemy is your friend. And right now, for Russia and North Korea, US is the main, you can say, antagonist in this entire dynamic, so to speak, because Russia right now has locked horns with US over Ukraine and multiple other issues, and North Korea, primarily because of its pursuance of its nuclear program and the US bonhomie with South Korea and Japan in the Pacific Ocean, has led to North Korea and Russia again aligning their priorities and getting their strategic interests aligned again. So that's why their relationship is getting strengthened, and we are seeing the current friendship growing up between the two countries.
But Taimur, it's a very important thing to understand. Does North Korea have anything to offer, or is it more of a political or diplomatic gimmickry that is taking place? Because we know of a North Korea that is very poor, that has people starving to death, that has not accomplished anything militarily in the recent history as well, except for the parades that they are doing and a lot of propaganda around the nuclear programs. So do you think there is something substantial that North Korea has to offer? And I'm saying this because the official handout has said that Russia is looking for North Korea to provide some weapons. Please tell us more about it.
Well, of course, optics are always a part of the greater game that is always taking place. Optics are always a part of it because apart from other substantial, pragmatic and some sort of, you can say, practical gains that two or more countries have to gain by engaging each other, optics and diplomatic outreach is always one of the points that are always going on simultaneously with the rest of the matters as well. But the thing is that right now there are speculations that Russia's arsenal is slowly and gradually drying up because of its city flattening strategy that it has carried out against Ukraine, with massive artillery attacks as well as missile attacks across the entire landscape of Ukraine. And it has been raining down missiles and artillery fires day in and day out on Ukrainian civilian as well as military installations. And the production, although Russians have a massive industrial complex with a huge capacity to produce massively, but again, the amount of ammunition that they are currently utilizing inside of Ukraine, the discrepancy is slowly and gradually drying up Russian armories. So yes, Russia is looking out for partners who can supply affordable, cheap and easily transferable ammunition which is compatible with the Russian artillery and missile systems. North Korea, being an old-time friend of the erstwhile USSR, has a vast domestic military industrial complex with a plethora of ammunition, missile systems and artillery ammos which can be used by the Soviet era systems that Russia has currently deployed to a greater extent inside of Ukraine's operational area as well. So it has a lot of artillery shells as well as rocket systems which Russia can use, and North Korea has abundance of it, and it is cheap, and it would also it will help Russia in easing some of the pressure over its own military industrial production complex as well. So procuring that ammunition of artillery as well as rocket systems from North Korea would be feasible for Russia. So yes, although North Korea is suffering economically, it has a lack of food and fuel commodities, especially after COVID-19 when it closed its borders. But as far as the military ammunition and rocket systems are concerned, I think North Korea has enough to offer Russia in this matter.
What we know of North Korea being more popular, or perhaps it's the propaganda, you can tell us better, for its intercontinental ballistic missiles, for its long-range ballistic missiles, for the use of solid fuels in its rocket system, and for its nuclear weapon, which Russia is the largest supplier of nuclear weapons, or the largest holder of the nuclear weapons in the world. So, in that context, will it be something which they can actually accomplish, or will it remain to be pure gimmicks, and you expect Russia to make more ties with more countries while shoring up further alliances?
Well, as far as the exchange of such advanced military technology for ballistic missiles and nuclear armed attack submarines are concerned, I don't think so that Russia would act so naively and offer a country like North Korea, which is actually considered an international pariah because of its aggressive nuclear program. Russia is never going to offer it such advanced military technology. Plus, you also have to keep in mind the China element in this entire dynamic as well, because China also supports the international sanctions against North Korea's nuclear program, or from offering it that sort of advanced technology which can actually, you can say, kickstart a very aggressive or disproportionate response from the international community collectively. So I don't think so Russia is going to go in that into that street with North Korea. But yes, as far as Russia providing North Korea with things that is concerned, I think more of it will be consisting of food commodities, fuel, hard currencies, as well as Russia is going to help North Korea in launching its spy satellites, because President Putin, during his summit with the North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, clearly stated that yes, Russia is going to help North Korea in launching satellites. Now, the spy satellite program, the terminology of spy was actually hidden, but North Korea actually plans on launching spy satellite program so that it can carry out advanced or forward reconnaissance against its adversaries, primarily South Korea, Japan, and United States of America. But as far as transfer of technologies regarding advanced and more developed ballistic missiles and nuclear armed attack submarines are concerned, I don't think so Russia is going to take that step.
Taimur, how Seoul will be looking into these developments? They must be logically very concerned about these developments taking place, because North Korea is a neighborhood that they have to deal with. So how would be the sentiments back there, and how will this be interlinked with politics back in the United States, because South Korea is one of the major partners in this entire region for the US.
Of course. Well, as far as my observance of South Korean media and their think tank community and academia is concerned, they are viewing it extremely suspiciously and with caution, and they are keeping a very strong eye on the entire developments that are taking place after President Putin and Kim Jong-un's meeting. They are viewing it very suspiciously. They are viewing it with a lot of concern, as well as the United States of America. The White House has clearly stated that North Korea and Russia will have to pay a heavy price if there is any exchange of weaponry between North Korea and Russia, or if Russia provides North Korea with any sort of advanced ballistic missile technologies or any other sort of nuclear armed attack submarine technologies is concerned. So there is a lot of concern in South Korea as well as in the United States of America. They are looking at it very suspiciously, and they are also giving out very serious warnings to both countries that if they go ahead with their plans of exchange of arms or exchange of advanced technologies, then both the countries will irk the ire of the international community.
Especially my last question, and I want your very brief response on it. China, a country that is increasingly feeling the heat of US's diplomacy, which is shoring up alliances against China, would it not be considering to reconsider or recalculate its policy with regards to North Korea? Because North Korea, richer in food, richer in weaponry, with modern weaponry, can cause a lot of problems for the United States. As you said, the friend of your enemy is your friend. So how about that?
Well, of course, like I said, that China is also a very pragmatic global power. And as far as its current policy with regards to North Korea is concerned, it is very principled, and it has remained very cautious of providing North Korea with any sort of weapons or technology which can actually allow or enable North Korea to carry out egregious attacks against its own adversaries, namely South Korea, Japan, or the United States of America. And there is a realization of inside the United States as well. Although there is political rhetoric within the United States where the US keeps on giving implicit or direct warnings to China to not allow North Korea get away with things that it is currently getting away with. That is why I earlier mentioned that Russia is never going to take any sort of steps as well, because Russia is very careful of not antagonizing China in this regard as well, since North Korea is China's area of influence. So
thank you very much, Tamil, for being guest in this part of our program. Ladies and gentlemen, very interesting development has taken place. You remember just 2 weeks ago we did a program on Korea and Japan shaking hands in presence of the American president in the United States, and now we are seeing the Russian president shaking hand with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. It apparently looks that the politics around North Korea is going to change. We'll take a break and we'll join you back with last segment of the program. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And the last topic of today's program is related to Pakistan. Pakistan's military and government, hands in hands together, have decided to take a severe action, a severe administrative action against all the holders of US dollars and other foreign currencies. According to the data collected by Ministry of Interior, a large number of investors are accumulating unnecessarily the foreign currency in Pakistan, which is not only creating an artificial pressure on the value of rupee, but also creating an exchange rate crisis for the government, which not only is causing problem for the importers, also for the exporters, but is also creating further issues of devaluation. And this unnecessary devaluation is coming out of nowhere. Not only the action that has been initiated by law enforcement agencies led by SIED, which is the front runner in this entire process, has substantially brought the value of US dollar down, but also it is expected that the value will remain low in the upcoming weeks and months. But that said, it all is happening at a time when Pakistan is dealing with a huge crisis in hand, and the crisis is that it owes a lot of money to international organizations, international lenders, and Pakistan has to pay back in billions of dollars to all these lender organizations. Will it affect the situation of USD in Pakistan? To talk about this very pertinent issue, I have invited Sultan Ali Haider, an expert of political economy, who will talk about this subject. Sultan, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Shabazz. It's a pleasure always.
With your background of financial markets, with your background of banking industry in the country, how do you see these developments that are taking place, led by SIED, which is a front runner of this entire process, but certainly is not the only organization doing this clampdown?
I think it's very welcome, and it's something that should have happened earlier, could have happened earlier. Perhaps we can comment, and people are commenting, that when there was an elected political government, why wasn't this aggressive step taken? But this is perhaps the positive side, that when you have a government which is not facing any political pressures, so it does the right thing, so it's able to do that. Now, the series of actions that have taken place, we are seeing the impact. Now, Pakistan has a debt of about $130 billion, as per some of the estimates. Now, every rupee change means that when Pakistani rupee devalues by 1 rupee against the dollar, 130 billion rupees gets added to our national debt. That again creates fiscal problems. When fiscal problem gets created, again the perception becomes weaker, then it adds further pressure. So these kind of steps and the results that we are seeing, they are very, very welcome.
Sultan, when we talk about the rate of USD, it is very important for us to understand the mechanism that defines the value of currency. So I would want you to shed some light on this drastic reduction in the value of USD, which was being sold at some point at 330 or 35 rupees in the open market. And I checked it slightly before this program. The today's closure rate was somewhere less than 290
Yeah.
Some it was 288, at some points it was 291. So how does this magic work?
Okay, so it is, I think it's important to focus on this specific area, and if you can put on, there are a couple of slides. So these specific events have happened in the last 3 months, or specifically last 1 month, which has led to that. So first of all, it is driven by the IMF agreement, right? So IMF agreement, our currency was under a lot of pressure whether IMF agreement happens or not. IMF agreement did happen, so our currency suddenly improved, and we were close to 300, and then we came back in 270, 275 rupee range. Then one of the speculations started to happen, because what people realized was, and the speculators especially, and the black market, it was that there is this clause in the agreement that the difference between open market and the interbank market will not be great. It should be around 1%, should not be a bigger difference. So what was happening was that the government was trying to hold the interbank market, so it was not a realistic thing, right? Which again, from IMF's perspective, it's the right thing also. Then the money doesn't flow from official channels. When the money doesn't, because somebody sitting outside Pakistan, overseas Pakistani, remitting money into Pakistan, now if through other channels they are getting a rate of, let's say, 300, and official channel was giving a rate of 280, they were incurring a loss of 20 rupees of 10%. They wouldn't want to do that, right? So that pressure was there. IMF said you do not do that, artificial management. Now when the agreement took place, this speculation started to take place, and that this impact is going to change. Now if you can put on the other slide, which shows the numbers, what is happening is market started to speculate, and that it will catch up, right? That we have to implement, because IMF would not release the next tranche. With that speculation, when the government started to let the interbank rate come close to the open market rate, the speculators started pushing the rate even higher. Now how speculators make money is, the more volatile the market is, the speculator will naturally make a lot more money. That's where the hoarding started to happen. With that momentum happening, every day people like you and me and so many other people, they would also start panic.
If I can cut you here, because we have very limited time for this segment, so let's keep the ball running. Importantly, the IMF's agreement that you are mentioning also has a very important or significant clause, and it says that Pakistan has to open up entire imports without any ifs and buts. Now, if we are opening all these imports, our import bill has a deficit of 30 to 35 billion dollars in a year. How would that be adjusted? Because and will it allow this current trend to last longer? Because eventually importers are going to come to the market naturally and say, give us more dollars, because you can't stop it naturally.
So this is one of the biggest criticism on the IMF program, or what the IMF says, because on one hand, IMF is forcing us to take so many strict measures, such as the increase in petrol prices and all of that, right? So you would expect, okay, in good faith, we'll do that, right? But then on the other hand, IMF, due to their own international agendas, right? So they would want that Pakistan should not stop its import, right? Which will benefit the countries that are exporting to Pakistan. So that is something where it doesn't make sense, and it's really frustrating for Pakistani policymakers, that because it, just like you were saying, it releases the pressure. So if we're taking all of these steps to bring the exchange rate down, and suddenly this happens, so it's you keep on chasing the same thing. So that it remains extremely frustrating. Last thing what I would say is, recently what has happened is the speculators were creating the problem, and there's this Foreign Exchange Companies Association. It interestingly complained directly to the authorities and also on the military side. So they directly appealed to them to intervene, because black market people were really pushing them out of the market. With the right kind of actions and interventions, certainly what we have seen is that dollars have started to flow through our official channels. So that has brought it down rapidly. It releases the fiscal pressure, and if the trend continues, with our budget position will improve significantly. And with that kind of improvement, so instead of a downwards spiral, we
But
could be
Sultan,
moving
if
to
I
an upward
understand you,
spiral.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So all the money that we make from export is going to come from the official channels.
Yeah.
That is a must. And all the money that we are going to spend on small imports like retailers or wholesalers importing stuff directly from the east or west are going to affect the rate of the market, of the open market. So we are still in a process, in a phase of it. This is not the final destination for the currency.
No, that is true. At the same time, the remittances that were coming. So if they start coming in from official channel, what was happening was the hoarders, when they take money outside, they don't send money to Pakistan. They keep on hoarding foreign currency for the Hawala business outside Pakistan, or whatever business comes to Pakistan, the unofficial channel dollars, they would be getting smuggled. So another thing in terms of the operations, Afghanistan's dollar supply is also, physical dollar supply is happening through Pakistan. So series of actions that were taken in the Peshawar market and Quetta market, two markets that do supply dollars illegally. So that clampdown again is impacting, because now the physical dollar demand and supply which is flowing that way, that has stopped. So with more availability coming into the market, it's rather interesting, because now people are sort of worried how to declare their dollars and to put dollars into the banking sector, into their accounts, right? Because if somebody is caught holding substantial amount of foreign currency, that in itself is a crime, and the government is becoming stricter. So it's becoming a very, very interesting space.
Thank you very much, Sultan Ali Haider, for being guest
Thank you.
in the last part of our program. Ladies and gentlemen, as Sultan Ali Haider said, let me sum it up. So what the government is trying to essentially do is to make sure that no unnecessary hoarding of the foreign currencies take place. All the currency that is bought is either bought for traveling abroad or bought for importing something. And if anyone is doing it unnecessarily, he's hampering the overall economy of the country. And the leadership of the country is quite determined to make sure that no one is able to harm the economy by illicit means. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.